I kind of want to like bag everything that I had planned so I could talk to Linda because there were so many news stories in there that just because I do a daily Apple news show, a news related Apple news show. I've done Mac OS Ken for 19 and a half years now. I used to work with a show called Inside Mac before that. So I've been doing daily Apple news for about 20 years. And I bring that up just to say that's what I come here with. I've got no inside knowledge on anything. I've just been watching them since daily, since before there was an iPhone. All right. So I love the fact that one of the last things that Linda talked about was the boring era being over. I think that was Ryan Christoffel at 9 to 5 Mac who deemed the boring era over. And I was not as on board with that idea until they actually announced everything they announced last week. So we're going to go over stuff that they announced last week. I will try to be as quick about it as I can because I don't want to just, regurgitate the press release. But there was really something exciting in all of this stuff. When I was first making my notes for today, I thought, well, how am I going to talk about it because there's so much? And I thought, okay, I'll make it easy. I'll just talk about the thing that's exciting. There is something exciting in everything that they announced. And it's been a long time since we've said that. I'm kind of on board with what Ryan Christoffel said because what they have done in the past few years is this processor runs this much cooler. This processor runs this much more efficiently. This glass is this much stronger. And certainly there was a lot of that, but there were design changes that not only speak to, man, this thing's getting hot. We should actually do something about cooling, just like the physicality of it down. To things that honestly, it feels to me like speak to the future of what Apple's going to be doing. And we can talk about that folded in with foldable iPhones and the lighter headset and all of it. But let's go over what they actually introduced first. The one thing you can say about everything that Apple introduced is it got better. At least Apple says so. The only thing you can't say that about is the iPhone Air, because there was no iPhone Air, so it can't really get better than it was before, because it wasn't before. They got the better cameras, of course. Interesting. I wish I understood the cameras a tiny bit more because I would love to be able to say what this means exactly. 48 megapixel fusion main camera on the iPhone 17. I understand those words, but then they say things like optical quality 2x telephoto. Okay, so is it really 2x telephoto or are they doing some sort of AI something or other in there? It's only when you get to the iPhone Pro and the 8x telephoto that they don't put any kind of modifier, qualifier, anything like that. It's got an 8x telephoto, which I loved my 5x telephoto on my iPhone 15 Pro until last Tuesday. I still really enjoy it. Actually, I get great pictures of lizards out front and the occasional ant. The displays are said to be better. Super Retina display, XDR display with ProMotion. Richard Gunther, did he talk? I'm sorry, because I know nobody else is talking. I don't know if he spoke here last meeting or the meeting before, but Richard Gunther got a bit shirty with some review that he read where somebody said if the next iPhone, if the iPhone 17 doesn't have ProMotion, I'm sticking with my iPhone 12. And Richard thought, how are you writing about tech and still using a phone that's 5 years back? We don't all make the big bucks, so I can't really, bash the guy for that. I have an iPhone 15 because somebody was kind enough to a sponsor actually was kind enough to say, hey, I'll get you an iPhone 15 if you'll advertise my business. Otherwise, I don't know what phone I would have currently. This year, though, if I were still walking around with my iPhone 13, I know I would be getting something from this because right now, as it stands, I'm not planning on getting anything. Very excited about all of it, not planning on upgrading everything or anything because everything I have is fine. My iPhone 15 Pro Max is fantastic. Still got plenty of storage, still has a great camera, and I'm not, honestly, I probably don't even need a Pro, but I happen to have one. The one thing I am kind of thinking about getting is the Apple Watch Series 11, mostly because of the health stuff. But I'm going to put a pin in that. We'll come back to that later. I've actually got parts of my thing where I'm just going to say we're putting a pin in this, and I've got a pile of pins at the end of what we're doing. So we will come back to it. The A19 processor for the iPhone 17 is interesting. 1.5 times faster than the iPhone 13's A15 Bionic, which I think is kind of a funny thing to say because they're that was such a powerful processor, I suppose, and the next one was, and it was a little bit better, but what are you going to say? It's 0.37 times better than our last processor. It's better to say, oh, it's 1.5 times faster. It's kind of funny that you have to go back a few phones to get there. But again, speaks to how they've been progressing as we go. The other thing that's really neat about all of the processors that Apple introduced, the A15N, I'm sorry, boop, where was I? The A19 and the A19 Pro is the fact that they've got a 6-core CPU, 5-core GPU, and each of those GPUs has a neural accelerator built in, which is going to help them a lot with Edge AI, which we will put a pin in and come back to. A lot of people thought that the price was going to go up on that phone. They thought that what Apple was going to do was increase the storage and then increase the price and sort of hide the price increase and the storage increase. They did increase the storage, now starts at 256 gigabytes instead of last year's 128. Comes in though at $799, which is the same as the starting price last year. That may have helped them a lot in China, which I know Linda was talking about earlier. And yes, there is a pin in that. We will come back to it. For people who don't know, they went up for order in 60-something countries last week, including here in the US. They will actually be out to buyers and on store shelves this Friday, the 19th of September, and then they'll go out to 20-something other countries about a week or two after that. The iPhone 17 Pro and the iPhone 17 Pro Max, powered by the A19 Pro. Again, we're talking about everything is better. The silicon shield on the front is better. The silicon shield, not silicon shield, ceramic shield on the front is better. Ceramic shield on the back is better. The 348 megapixel fusion cameras, main, ultra wide, and the all new telephoto offer the equivalent of 8 lenses, including the longest optical quality zoom ever on an iPhone. That would be the 8X telephoto that I was talking about earlier. Ceramic shield, I already mentioned, 6-core CPU, 6-core GPU, neural accelerator on every core of the GPU. Again, we'll get to the Edge AI thing. This is one of the exciting design things I was talking about, because the power of that GPU and CPU, the power of that processor is obviously going to generate heat. They've done a decent amount of engineering on the inside. Apple has built a vapor chamber that's laser welded into a strong light and thermally conductive aluminum unibody, which we will come back to when we start talking about where all of this stuff seems to be leading, at least to me. Now, they did kind of raise the price here, which again may be tied to China, believe it or not. So iPhone 17 Pro starts with a storage of 256 gigabytes and a starting price that's $100 higher than last year's iPhone 16 Pro. You could argue they didn't raise the price because last year's 256 gigabyte model would be $100 higher than last year's 128 gigabyte model, except the barrier to entry is higher now. If you want the entry-level iPhone 17 Pro, you're paying $100 than you were, $100 more than you were for the entry level last year. And then it goes up to a crazy, well, the Pro anyway, the iPhone 16 Pro Max, excuse me, goes up to a crazy 2 terabytes. I've been trying to figure out why. And I think the obvious answer is for people who are shooting video, because the quality now is such that you can shoot movies on these, like whole movies. They shot 28 years later, which was that zombie flick that came out, the third, 28 days later, 28 weeks later, and 28 years later. And then this is the first of 3 others. Whether they'll shoot all of those on the phone, I don't know. But obviously, having 2 terabytes of storage could stand you well in situations like that. Either that or, I don't know, you're a wilderness photographer who's going off into the jungle for a month and you're going to shoot everything you possibly can, secure in the fact that you've got satellite connectivity, as Linda also mentioned earlier. All of those went up for order last Friday. They come out this Friday, the 19th of September, in over 60 countries, and then 22 more countries, or roughly 22 more countries in a few weeks after that. The other thing that was really exciting, as far as the phones are concerned, is the iPhone Air. And I don't want an iPhone Air. I don't need my phone to be that thin, but I really want to see the iPhone Air because they seem to have packed so much into something that's that thin. I think it's 5.6 millimeters, I believe. the thinnest iPhone that Apple has ever done, and yet they say it comes with Pro performance because it's got the same A19 Pro processor that's in the iPhone 17 Pro and the iPhone 17 Pro Max. Got the ceramic shield on the back. It's got the ceramic shield on the front. I mean, it's got not everything that the other phones have, but it's more phone than most people need, I think, and certainly more phone than people were expecting from this. There was a lot talked about how Apple's going to have to really, trim back a lot of the offerings for the iPhone Air to be able to get something that small. And yeah, okay, it's got one camera, but they're doing their tricks with the camera that, hopefully people won't notice it. Photographers are going to notice it. People who have been buying pros for a long time are probably going to notice it. But people who are on the fence and, we're going to get a new iPhone and think it's kind of sexy, they may go ahead and upgrade to that, not, caring so much about the camera. Um, Price is not a joke. It's $1,000, $999, which feels like a lot compared to the $799 iPhone 17. But then you think about the iPhone 10, which was however many years ago now. That was $1,000, and that was the future of the iPhone. I think they even said in the press release, the future is here. And that seemed like that seemed brash to me when they said that, especially charging $1,000. But then you think about the things that we got. We got the LiDAR, we got the Face ID. I can't remember other things off the top of my head, but when they said the future is here, that was true as far as what was going to be coming to the phone, because now I think the iPhone 16e has Face ID, and that's the $599 phone. The line that I said on macOS Ken was, it reminded me of the William Gibson quote, the future is here, it's just not evenly distributed. That was definitely true for the iPhone 10, because I remember thinking, who would ever need that? Who would ever want that? And I bought an iPhone 8, I think, or an iPhone 8 Plus, which I proceeded to break 2 days later. So that was great. Um, and now, it's all stuff that I wouldn't even think about getting a phone that didn't have Face ID because, it's very convenient and very secure. It's got the N1, that is a new networking chip from Apple. Actually, all of the iPhones that Apple introduced have the N1. What's really interesting, they've got a chip called the C1X, which is the cellular modem that Apple made, invented, came up with. They're still only doing it in their starter phones, though, which I don't know if that's because they have problems with production, if it's that they not, I don't want to say problems. They may not be able to produce as many of them as they can for the other phones because lots of other companies are making the Qualcomm or the Broadcom or whichever modems they're using in the rest of their phones right now. Apple obviously is trying to get everything to its own silicon. I would imagine that this is coming. It was surprising to see that they have iterated the C series because the C was the modem that's in the iPhone 16e. And then, I mean, if you had been betting, you might have thought, okay, well, they're probably going to roll the C series out to everything this time. They made the C1 better, made it the C1X, but it's only available for the iPhone Air, which again is supposed to have pro performance. So I don't think they're skimping on it. I'm really curious about, why that happened. Anyway, $999 to get into an iPhone Air. That is the 256 gigabyte model. And again, you could kind of look at that as a little bit of a price increase, even though, as we said, there was no iPhone Air before. They chopped away the iPhone, the Plus model. That started at $899. That's gone now. So your two choices for getting in below $1,000 are either $800 or $1,000, minus $1. So you can technically say not quite that. And the Air has the same order dates and release dates as the ones we were talking about. For all the iPhones, as I mentioned, they've got the N1, which is that networking chip that Apple has made. They have also put those neural engines on the GPU for every phone, which speaks to how important they think AI is going to be. Although again, it's not going to be. We'll come back to it. The thing that I honestly I think is going to be well, I mean, what I would really love to have, and I'm not getting a new iPhone for it, but they have changed the front-facing camera, the selfie cam, as we call it, to something called center stage front camera. Now, I think we've had center stage as a technology on like Macs and the Apple TV, not Apple TV, on Macs and other things that Apple has done. But this selfie camera has a square um, sensor in it instead of the usual vertical, I suppose, sensor that they had before. So if you wanted to get like a good, wide shot, you always had to turn your phone over to do to do like a good landscape selfie. It's smart enough now that it can see it and know where your head is, and then if a friend sneaks in, it will actually sort of reposition so that you're both in there. You can do three or four people, and because of the square sensor, you don't actually have to turn your phone to do that. And that's hardly a thing that's going to be the reason that people are going to buy it, but I think it's going to be a thing that people are going to love once they actually have it in their hands. I look forward to that with my iPhone 18 or 19 or whatever ends up coming after this phone that I have that I'm not going to say anything bad about because it's right there and it's looking at me. Anyway. Let's move on really quickly to the AirPods Pro. I'm very excited about these. Got a heart rate sensor that had been rumored. Indications in Apple's AirPods press release are that that sensor and a few other modern iPhone features let the AirPods sort of take the place of the Apple Watch as far as the fitness stuff is concerned. Combined with sensor fusion from the AirPods Pro, accelerometers, gyroscope, GPS, and new on-device AI model on iPhone. Users can start up to 50 different workout types, track their heart rate and calories burned, close their move ring, and then earn awards in their fitness app, which has been like one of the things that like drove Apple Watch adoption. So it's kind of interesting. They're like, or just put this in your ear, and you'll get most of that same stuff. Of course, there's a tremendous amount of other stuff that comes with the Apple Watch. We'll get to those in just one moment. There's a really cool thing that they introduced along with AirPods Pro 3 live translation, which is kind of a live in the future moment. So if you were in, well, it needs not to be an EU country because live translation is not going to the EU. If you, living in the States, take your AirPods Pro and go to Italy and then turn on live translation, it's going to work for you. If you're talking to somebody in Italy who has their Apple ID set to an EU nation. So the person you're talking to is in Italy. Their Apple ID is set to the EU. For whatever reason, they're not going to be able to use live translation with you. A lot of people say that's because the EU is more stringent about how AI is used and deployed. It's possible that it's coming later. Apple hasn't said why. They've just said no for right now. Ideally, though, so let's put you in Guam. That's not in the EU, as far as I know. Let's put you in Guam and say you're there and you are speaking English and the person is talking to you. I shouldn't have said Guam because I don't know what language they speak in Guam. Doesn't matter. I mean, it matters to people in Guam. Anyway, you're someplace where this works for both of you. You're going to talk in English to that person, and they, on their AirPods, are going to hear the language that they have chosen, what you just said. And then they're going to respond to you in the language that they speak, and it's going to come back to you in your AirPods as English. A friend of mine tried it today. She is a Spanish speaker. She did not have anybody else that she could talk to, so she couldn't test the back and forth, but she speaks enough Spanish that she could know whether it was right or wrong. She turned on the telenovela on a Spanish channel and said that it was actually pretty accurate. Everything that she was hearing was what they were saying, translated into English, which is kind of mind-blowing. I mean, it's not going to be like, Star Trek where they say it and it happens immediately, but close enough. I mean, it's kind of mind-blowing. That's going to start working with English, French, German, Portuguese, and Spanish, Chinese, Italian, Japanese, and Korean. See, it wouldn't work in Italy anyway. Those are coming later this year. By year's end, those others will be there. Now, one other thing that's really cool to me about what Apple is doing right now, you don't have to have a pair of AirPods 3 to make that translation thing work. If you have AirPods Pro 2 or AirPods 4 with active noise cancellation. So we're talking about AirPods that are a year and 2 years old, depending. It's going to work for that, which I think is great because that is the kind of thing that you could absolutely see a company, let's be honest, it's the kind of thing that Apple has done in the past. They have introduced features where there's no reason the phone or the whatever you have can't run it, but it just doesn't. And they might say, well, it's not as good. Or, they're never going to say it's because we want you to buy the new thing, but that's always kind of the suspicion. For them to say this is coming to AirPods Pro 3, and then afterwards saying, oh, and it's also coming to AirPods Pro 2 and to the AirPods that aren't even Pro. I mean, the most recent ones with the active noise cancellation, but that was actually kind of exciting to see. Otherwise, the AirPods do everything, the same as the old ones. They have better battery life, kind of. They're better on a single charge, but the case doesn't hold as much of a charge. So if you don't have AirPods Pro, this might mean nothing to you, but you should be able to listen. I believe it is for 8 hours with active noise cancellation turned on, because that's fairly resource intensive as far as the battery is concerned. And then you just pop it back in your case and you're good for another long amount of time. Um, but the amount of time that the case holds is not as much as it was. Why? I don't know. It's something they did. Those are $249 and they come out this Friday. And then the watch was kind of interesting because they kind of brought parity to a lot of them. Like, for example, they all run the S10 chip now. Something I read someplace said this was the first year that there has not been an improvement for this processor running any of the Apple Watches. They also graduated the Apple Watch SE3. Yeah, the Apple Watch SE3 up to the S10 chip. So it gets things now like an always-on display, which used to be a more advanced feature. The double tap gesture, the wrist flick gestures on device SIRI. I don't want to say it out loud because who knows what I'll start going. It also gets fast charging. The cellular versions of the S3 now support 5G, as do Apple Watch Series 11 and Apple Watch Ultra 3. Available in two sizes, 40 millimeters and 44 millimeters. The Apple Watch SE3 will run buyers $249. It's missing a couple of things, which is why, like, honestly, I feel like, because I have a Series 7, I feel like it might be a better watch, a more full-featured watch than the Series 7 that I have. But yeah, the Series 7 was 4 now, 4 ago. We're up now to Series 11. It's got fall detection. It's got the important things that you want it to have if it is a device that you're buying for an elderly relative, or if it's a device that you're buying for your kid. And I mean your kid, not your 18 or 20-year-old or something like that. Um, it strikes me as a really good device as kind of a starter watch. The Series 11, it starts to get into more hardcore health stuff. I had said earlier that the new AirPods Pro 3 take care of a lot of the fitness stuff, which fitness is mostly what I use or what I think of using my Apple Watch for. Am I closing my rings? 9 times out of 10, no, but I do like to check. I do go, walking or running with it occasionally. That you can do that with the headphones is kind of interesting. The headphones will not do things like sleep apnea notifications. And what they introduced this year, which is the hypertension alerts. So Apple says that it figures about 1 million people who don't even know that they have hypertension are going to be hipped to the fact that they need to talk to their doctor about their blood pressure just by virtue of the fact that they're going to be wearing an Apple Watch Series 11 or an Apple Watch Ultra 3, because both of those picked up the hypertension awareness thing. And I'm having a hard time not getting that. It was the heart rate. It was the blood oxygen, because remember, we were closer to COVID, the big bad part of COVID, when blood oxygen reading came out in the Apple Watch. And I kind of had a bit of a freak out because my Apple Watch was keeping me fit as long as I, went along with it, but it wasn't going to tell me, how my blood oxygen readings were doing. And so I ended up getting it, I think, well, I was given an Apple Watch that did that. And then I ended up upgrading to the Apple Watch Series 7. And since then, I've been like, it's all been fine. I am getting to an age now where every time I go to the doctor, they're like, your blood pressure is great. Actually, they usually have to do it twice because the first time I'm just nervous being at the doctor. But the second time, they're like, yeah, it's fine. Don't worry about it. But if I can have something on my wrist that's going to be keeping up with that for me, I want to ask you guys later if you think Apple is selling fear. That's a conversation that came up a few years ago. And I don't, well, we'll talk about that later. Somebody remind me if I forget to, because it's a real question that I have. I've actually had an argument for a couple of years with a friend of mine who says they're totally selling fear. I don't know if there's a difference between selling fear and selling, you know, every car has airbags. Are you selling fear at that point? Except, of course, you can't choose a car that doesn't have airbags unless you're buying an antique. And yet I keep saying we'll talk about it later, so we'll talk about it later. Apple Watch Ultra 3 is the last of the watches. That, of course, is the rough and tumble one. That's the one for going out to the outback, climbing rocks, going scuba diving, whatever. I joked with Peter Cohen that I'm thinking maybe about an Apple Watch Series 11 or an Apple Watch Ultra 3 because I could go scuba diving. You don't know. Never going scuba diving, so I'm not getting the Apple Watch Ultra 3. Cool thing that it does have, though, Linda was talking earlier about the satellite availability for the all the iPhones now back to the 14, I guess. No, not all of them. Is it only the Pro? I can't remember off the top of my head. Either way, the Apple Watch Ultra 3 has its own satellite connectivity, which makes sense because again, it's for people who are, rock climbing and hiking and going off grid and what have you. $799. Did I put that down? Yeah, $799 for the Apple Watch Ultra 3. If you're thinking you're going to skate by and just, I'm going to cheap out and get the AirPods Pro 2 or the Apple Watch Ultra 2, no, you're not. You might be able to get it from the refurbished store, and certainly there are going to be places that you can get it online. In fact, you might get really good deals on those because they're trying to sell out, but Apple has canceled those. They're not available anymore. Because if you want to buy an Apple Watch Ultra, they want you to have the most ultra one you can get. So I said we're going to talk about it later, and then I looked down at my notes here, and that was actually the next thing. Do we do like, can I ask questions? Is that a yes? Okay. What do you guys think about the whole idea of is Apple selling fear? I have never thought so. I can't remember which one they introduced a few years ago, but there was a feature they introduced a few years ago that got a bunch of people, Gruber during Fireballs, John Gruber may have been one, saying that Apple has gone from innovating to selling fear. And I don't think about health notifications as a thing that sells fear. And then I will be honest, when I was watching this year's event, which was a week ago tomorrow, I guess, the awe-dropping event, when they showed the video of the guy having a stroke, and he actually, he was there and he was talking about, I love my Apple Watch because I know if I hadn't been wearing it, I don't know if I would even still be here today. But then they cut in video of him falling down, having a stroke. And I had like that was the first time I had felt like, oh, guys, so are we selling safety at this point or are we selling fear? And if anybody has any thoughts, I would love to hear them because it's like I said before about like you can't buy a car without airbags. I guess the big difference is you can buy a watch that won't tell you about hypertension. And at that point, is Apple selling fear? Or are they just saying the SE is not for people who worry about it, even though we want your mom to have one if you think she might fall down? I don't know. Who does anybody have any thoughts that on that? Because I'm curious to hear from other people.
I would just say no, I don't think they're pandering to fear. I think they're selling a useful, needed, appreciated thing. And maybe the advertisers tilted it a little into the fear spectrum slightly, because that's what advertisers do to gain the most traction they can get. But I think Apple handled it really well, and they're focusing on health and
Hmm.
saving your loved ones and SOS messages out in the wilderness. That's good. That I don't think that the stroke falling down stuff. I don't think it's pandering to fear. I think it's reasonable.
Forgive me, I can't see who is saying that, but you are.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name's Daniel Feldman. Nice to meet you.
Hey, Daniel, nice to meet you. And thank you for saying that because you reminded me it was the satellite thing. It was crash detection. I think it was crash detection was the
Yeah.
one that all of a sudden everybody was like, "Hey, Apple's just selling fear." It's like, well, I, you know, I don't know that I've actually known anybody who died in a car accident, but I mean, there like a lot of people would probably say, "Yeah, I wish it had been there 5 years ago." And no, that's not selling fear. That's selling a safety feature that's available. Did anybody
Yeah,
else? Go
and
ahead.
I
I'm
think
sorry.
they have a soft enough touch that they maybe pander to the heart a little bit, but they're not like just like, oh my God, you're gonna die without this. Like, no, they're not pandering to fear, I don't think at all. I think
Yeah,
that there's a slight maybe tilt a little bit. The advertisers want to make it dramatic because that sells or whatever, but
yeah.
I think they had a reasonable approach.
I would love to see how Apple Watch sales do if they did lead with that. You're
I,
gonna die without this watch. Are we
yeah, yeah,
kidding?
yeah. How comparable are, I don't think it's fair to compare Apple Watch to just any watch,
Hmm.
right? But how are the Samsung has a watch and Android, there are other watches that are smartwatches.
Yeah.
So I would be interested in knowing if those are comparable.
Yeah, I wish I had an answer for you, and I don't.
Yeah,
I mean, there have been times in the past where, yeah, I don't even want to, forgive me. Because what I want to say just sounds like I'm just a big Apple fanboy, and not being able to back up what I want to say, I don't know. I don't have an
anyway,
answer for that.
yeah. I mean, to me that would matter, but it's I don't think. Yeah, I'll agree with Daniel. I don't see that they're selling fear. I think they're selling safety. And
Hmm.
the fact of the matter is that the things that they're selling do work. I've fallen a couple times and it's come up with a fall, you
Yeah.
know, fall alert. And one time I fell, had a really bad fall, and it turns out I didn't need assistance, but I could have on that one.
Hmm.
So it's that's those are nice to have. Mm.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, we moved my mom to an Apple Watch because she hated the fall detector thing that had been prescribed. First of all, it came with like a 30 or $40 a month charge, but
Yeah,
then also it was so heavy around her neck she didn't wear it.
Yeah.
yeah.
And it was great when it was in the bedroom and she was in the kitchen and she fell down in the kitchen and she was there for, I mean, literally she was there for about an hour, I think, before somebody happened to be coming home anyway. She was nowhere near the phone. She was nowhere near that. She now has an Apple Watch, and it has. She's always fine, so it never has actually called us. But always when she tells me about it, I'm like, "Hey, did your watch go off?" One time it did not, but the rest of the time it did. So I don't
Uh,
know.
I got a question.
Go ahead.
Uh, my wife had a stroke,
Hmm.
okay, and apparently the selling point with the stroke was affiliated with falling. When you were talking about it, you said that
No, I
when
apologize. Uh, I think it was. The gentleman had a stroke and fell, and that alerted authorities, I believe, is what happened with that. It might have been an irregular heartbeat, though. I mean, it was about a minute of
Mhm.
Apple's presentation last week, and I do not remember off the top of my head. I
Well,
apologize.
yeah, but at any rate, my wife had a stroke, but she was sitting in a chair,
Hmm.
so she didn't fall.
Hmm.
So, I think the fall theory is a good one, but it doesn't necessarily meet the specifications of strokes.
Yeah, well, no, and forgive me if I focus too much on that, I apologize. The reason that was in my mind was because they actually showed something potentially catastrophic happening to somebody in their video. And it was not a reenactment. I don't know why this person was running video. Maybe it was an outdoor security thing. I'm not sure why. What kind of made me worry about the messaging was the fact that they showed something sort of scary. It was
Mhm.
part of many things that they talked about. They were talking to people about various things that they had, and his was the one that stuck out because his was the one that kind of,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
I say, it skirted a line as far as presentation. Again, completely with the gentleman's, permission. He has to have volunteered the video. It's not like Apple was at his house shooting
Mhm.
something else. It just felt kind of it felt kind of odd to me.
So where then in there would be the dividing line between fear and caution?
Well, that's a good question, and I don't have an answer. I mean, maybe it is literally the lead. Maybe it is the you don't want to die, do you? I mean, honestly, that might be it. Like, because bear in mind too, when these articles were being written several years ago about Apple selling fear, they weren't being, it wasn't, my mom, my sister, my special lady friend, none of these people came to me and said Apple is selling fear. It was people who write for TechCrunch. It was people who, it was maybe Gruber. I mean, it was people like me who have spent far too long studying every single thing that tech companies do. And if you're looking for the good things, you can find the good things. If you're looking for something that's going to be sensational, you can find that too. And maybe they really did feel that. I'm not saying they were being disingenuous, but a lot of people felt like you could make the case that what Apple was doing was selling fear rather than innovating. I kind of feel like if they sell you a watch that'll tell you that you've been in a car accident, that's an innovation. And maybe they are still playing on the fear of that. But yeah, what would be great is if I'm in the what do they call it? The Nevada Outback. I was driving on some trail earlier this year where I had no idea where we were, and I will tell you that none of our cell phone carriers knew where we were either. Our phones all said
Mhm.
SOS.
Mhm.
And I like the fact that I had a phone that would have been smart enough to know, hey, something bad happened because nobody was passing us anytime soon. If we'd gone way off the road, they might not have seen us anyway.
And
So,
if if that message gets lost on the things that it's less about, stoking any sort of fear and more of in the unlikely event the following things happen, you're vulnerable, or some medical thing happens, we're
yeah,
watching out for you.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
which
Not
has
so
its
they're not
own
so
level.
painfully obvious about that, but
Well,
uh,
that's got its own level of creepiness when you say it that way, though. I mean, which I'm not,
What what are they supposed to do? I mean, I've seen I will just say we've been on cruises where we've mentioned but we had a guy who told us that the way he phrased it and his phrasing was mistaken as we will know, but he said basically his Apple Watch woke him up in the middle of the night and told him he was having a heart attack, and he looked at it and he went, "Oh, I don't feel that bad." And then he went, maybe I'll go to the hospital anyway. And he went and he was in fact having a heart attack.
hmm,
So I mean, so I have mentioned that story to a couple of other people on cruises, and one lady said, "Oh, then I'm going to get an Apple Watch." And I said, but she happened to be an Android user. And I said, "Well, you're going to have to upgrade to the iPhone." She said, "I don't care. I'm going to get one." It was an immediate response, which is kind of interesting because I wasn't. I mean, there are times when I've sold Apple stuff, tried to persuade people, but this was not one of those.
hmm.
And so how I guess the upshot of that story is how do you give that information without invoking a cautionary response? I
I
mean,
would just,
maybe
if I could
Mostly, I
say
think,
a quick thing, I would just say they did a good job. They're doing good stuff, and there will be naysayers that are critical of every little nitpicking thing. But
yeah,
yeah,
I don't think they were angling it as like, oh my God, you're gonna die without this product. Like,
right.
I don't think that was the vibe at all. And the nitpickers will try to portray it that way, but I think that's excessive and inappropriate. I think they had a balanced nuanced way of saying like, oh my God, this actually helped save people's lives. This is real. This
Yeah.
is a good thing. And and I don't think they over push the like, oh, you're gonna die without it vibe at all.
Yeah. Well, nitpicking is what the tech press does. I mean, and I'm not, and good, kind of. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
if you want enough information about anything Apple does, go to CNN or watch CNN because Apple is big enough now that they can't introduce anything without probably 5 to 10 seconds at least on your local news station. And then you could read a little bit more on CNN and then read a bit more on CNBC. And then finally you can go to TechCrunch and, 9 to 5 Mac and Apple Insider and Tech Radar and Tom's Guide and any number of places where, I mean, that's what they do. If they came out and just said everything's great, then they're not even really a tech site anymore. But I mean, I don't think I've seen anybody the only reason I brought up again that video from this time, because this time was the first time that I had an moment from it. Not never before have I said, "Oh gosh, guys, guys are leaning kind of hard in that." It was just there was I don't know, watching something bad happen to somebody. I want to really quickly go to. Sorry.
Well,
Charles had a comment.
it would be curious to actually see what sort of reactions and press conference there were as a comparison when they introduced satellite connectivity and OnStar into cars.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
There was probably a lot of Big Brother concerns and
true.
overreach, and yeah, there was similar things there. Absolutely.
That's so interesting because I remember all of those OnStar commercials, but I was actually running live radio at the time, so that was background noise while I was, trying to queue up stuff for the next segment going back in. But you're right, their whole thing was the following is an actual call between an OnStar person and a customer, and then just somebody screaming. Not really, they didn't do that, but I mean something horrible happening to somebody and then saying we'll get somebody there right away. Always ending with a reassuring message, but yeah. The OnStar at that point leaned pretty hard onto the fear part. I want to go to really quickly because I want to make sure that we get to what happened with the iPhone 17 because everybody thought that Apple was going to do half of what Apple did or twice what Apple did, maybe. Everybody thought the iPhone 17 was going to come with 256 gigabytes of storage and be priced at $899. And Apple came with 256 gigabytes of storage and came with a price tag of $799. Linda mentioned the fact that it sold nuts in China, and it sold nuts in China. JD.com, which is kind of like our Amazon, I guess. I mean, they're one of the big 2 or 3 e-tailers in China. JD.com says that the iPhone 17 sold as many units in the first minute of availability that iPhone 16 sold in the first day of availability last year. Sales were off the chart as far as that is concerned. Now, as Linda mentioned, the Chinese economy did not recover quite as quickly. And where are we today? That's another thing for another thing. But China came out of lockdown. It took them longer to. China's economy had a lot of the turbulence that we had a year or two before coming out of lockdown. And so China has been subsidizing smartphones for consumers as long as they are $800 or less. Apple's iPhone is US $799. And I heard somebody, 1 or 2 analysts say, that's brilliant, that's perfect, that's going to shoot sales through the roof. And that seems to have panned out. I'm also curious about the iPhone Air. I was very excited about the very first iPad when it was announced. And I thought I probably wanted one, but I wasn't certain. I had to go to the Apple store and try it and see. And still, I didn't walk out with one. It took me about another week or two to go, okay. At that point, there were enough news stories about it that I thought if I'm going to be talking about it for macOS Ken, I really need to understand it. I don't need to just, be aware that it's out there, which has not been the case for everything. But the iPad was a different enough thing that I felt like, okay, if I'm going to talk about it, I'm going to need to know it. And if I'm going to know it, I'm going to need to have one. I don't feel the same way about the iPhone Air, but I do wonder if people are not sure until they see it. There are some colors that are already not available or are being delayed. I was watching that part of the keynote with my significant other, and they announced the gold one, and she went. I mean, she made a noise. She made a noise. It might just have been ooh or something like that, but it was like it was a nice noise. Two of the iPhone Airs that are hardest to get right now are the cloud white and the light gold. You can still get the black and you can still get the blue with relative ease. Again, it depends too if you go through your carrier or go through Apple. Um, but the white and gold are the hardest to get at this point. And so I think there were people who had already decided they were going to get them, and they've now chosen the colors they wanted. My gut tells me that there are going to be a lot of people who are going to end up with them, but they have to see it first. They have to hold it first to know, that it's going to be the right phone for them. That said, I don't think it's going to be the top selling phone. I think that's probably still going to be the Pro side. There are probably still going to be articles about how it is a failure, which is another thing about the nitpicking of the tech press that drives me insane. Any new thing that Apple does that doesn't beat everything else is a failure as far as somebody is concerned in the tech press. The iPhone Air is not going to be the number one phone, I don't think. I think it's going to be, I think you're going to see it. I think you're probably going to see more in the wild than you see foldable phones currently, but it's not going to be the top selling phone. And I'll be curious to see whether we get the same sort of it's a failure articles that we got about the iPhone Plus for a couple of years and the iPhone Mini before that. Neither of those were the biggest selling phone. I don't know where people come, though, to say, oh, it's a failure, because we don't know what Apple's metric was for success. We don't know how many they made. We don't know how many they wanted to make. We don't know how many they, were expecting to sell. It's possible, probable that they were just making sure that they had a full range. Um, anyway, the iPhone Air is going to be kind of interesting. I also kind of wonder if the delay in China has meant that Apple has more iPhone Airs to go around, and so you don't have as long a wait here as you might expect. The other thing that we heard from TF International analyst Ming-Chi Kuo, I believe earlier today, was Apple made 3 times as many iPhone Airs this year as they made iPhone 16 Plus going into launch. And so if you look at them and try to compare them apples to apples, which you shouldn't do because one costs more money and is, maybe skimps on the features, and there are a number of reasons you shouldn't do that. But one comparison that people are looking at was it took longer last year to get an iPhone 16 Plus in the first week than it is taking to get the iPhone Air. But Apple made 3 times as many, according to, supply chain scuttlebutt. The other thing is, I said on yesterday's macOS Ken, order times change, delivery times change. I know that when I ordered my very first Apple Watch, it said it was going to come about 3 weeks after the launch date. And then I got a message a couple of days later saying, hey, you're going to get yours at launch date. Got an email from somebody after today's macOS Ken saying, yeah, I had ordered my phone. It had said that it was going to be 2 weeks after launch, after the 19th. So I guess that would put it in the first weekend of October. And then they got another email from Apple today saying it's actually going to be there on the 19th. So we don't really know how sales are going. Things seem to be going well. The only thing that we have that even tells us, well, I mean, there are the weights that you do see. That does indicate a certain amount of demand. And then, of course, there's the thing that JD.com said, not necessarily applicable to our lives since we're not in China, but that's still kind of an amazing stat. Without the phone having AI, without the phone folding, with Huawei and all the other Chinese makers getting better and better, it turns out if you make it something that people can actually get, they kind of go for it. There's one other thing I wanted to be sure to hit. Oh, it was the Edge AI stuff. So there's a lot that I don't understand about AI, and I have stayed away from using any of it, to be honest, because I don't feel the need to give any information to Anthropic, OpenAI, nothing to Grok. The thing that Apple has talked about for a very long time, and there are a couple of the financial analysts who follow as well, they want as much AI stuff to happen on device, what's referred to as edge AI. That's one of the things that's most exciting to me about what Apple announced with the A19 and the A19 Pro processors, putting all of those neural accelerators on each of those GPUs is them positioning themselves to have AI live on the device, which I think is better for consumers and the planet because AI data centers just chew through energy. And if I can get my phone to do all of that stuff, if as much of that stuff as can happen on the phone happens on the phone, that's me not sharing my information and not chewing through the same kind of energy there. And I think, well, that's not even close to everything. Good Lord.
I think that was great, by the way. Thank you for saying that.
Which part? I'm sorry.
Just the whole thing about on-device AI, like privacy on device.
Yeah.
That's very important.
I wish I had a better understanding of what it's actually going to be like. I mean, to be completely honest with you, I wouldn't go so far as to say jealous of the people who talk to Chat GPT like it's a friend or something, but the idea of having a built-in chat component to your phone that first of all is hopefully not drawing from the rest of the internet going, no, it's totally fine to put gasoline in your pizza. I would like it to not necessarily be like being fed as much crap as so much of generative AI that's out there right now, or the large language models that are out there right now seem to be. But also, I just don't need it having all of my information. I don't want to give it all of my information. So, yeah, I'm turned on by the idea of the edge AI stuff. I mean, the other thing too is I whether I should or not, I trust Apple, at least as it stands right now. If they come out with an AI thing that still has to go to the cloud, then maybe I would use that because I trust it. I don't like when the assistant that lives on my phone seems to automatically default now, or almost automatically default now to, do you want me to ask ChatGPT? I like the fact that Apple has built-in protection so that it's keeping my name away from ChatGPT, but I still don't like the fact that it seems to sort of be defaulting or almost defaulting to going to an LLM outside of the whole thing. I think I said at the beginning, forgive me, and this is the one thing that I absolutely want to hit, because Linda was talking before about the possibility of the lighter headset, talking about the possibility of the folding phone. The thing that most excited me about today, and where we'll come back to the whole thing that Ryan Christoffel said about this being the end of the iPhone's boring era, this is the first time in a long time where I felt like you could see these phones and see a future beyond iPhone. Past couple of years, it's been, okay, well, that iPhone is better. And now I know that when I get my next iPhone, it's going to be even better than this one. Or, 2 or 3 down the line, it's going to be even better than that. That vapor cooling thing that they made for this phone is solving a real problem that's going to be a real problem when we have lighter headsets and when they're putting the more powerful processor in those headsets. And I'm stuck on the headset thing because I still think that's the next thing in computing. I still think actually being able to see your data, manipulate your data, move around your data in a different way, not just having it on the screen, is that has felt to me for a long time and still feels to me like that's the next thing in tech or in computing, actually being able to visualize your data in a different way. And so I feel like they're solving those like problems for that. And I've gotten a lot more forgiving. Sounds like I was judgmental. And yeah, I was. I've gotten a lot more forgiving now about the talk of the folding phone because I never understood what problem a folding iPhone solved. And I talked about this on macOS 10 a couple of weeks ago. Oh, no, last week. I'm thinking about it the wrong way. It's not a question of what problem it solves for the consumer. It's a question of what problem it solves for Apple. Because there are lots of people who are turned on by the idea of a folding iPhone. And even if it doesn't actually solve a problem for them, They just like the idea so much that they're going to buy them, provided that they're not $3,000. And some people might still buy them at $3,000 because it's neat. And that to them feels like the future. To me, it feels like breakage. And it feels like it's not really going to do what I want it to do. Like if I want it to be a phone, I want it to be thinner than a folding phone would be. And if I want it to be an iPad, I'll just go get my iPad. But Apple is going to learn so much doing that as far as making, thinner, more flexible displays, as far as dealing with breakage, as far as dealing with production. And I don't know that that necessarily goes into the headset that I want, which is the one that costs less than, $3,500 or whatever, and has a better processor and has cooler fans and all that stuff, or no fans, but a better cooling system. But there was just so much stuff that happened with this event that it felt like if you weren't just watching the video as you were passing through the room, if you were actually looking at the things that they were presenting, it kind of felt like you could see a future past the iPhone with this. And that's both the cooling thing, that is the thinner form factor, that is the better battery life, that is we're going to trick you into thinking this camera is better than it actually is. And it's also having so many things move across so many things at this point. Things that we have associated with our Apple Watches are now, okay, you want it in the AirPods? Fine, it's in the AirPods instead. It's sort of a pervasive computing. It's the kind of ecosystem magic that Apple has worked for so long that we don't think about how great it works. We think about how crappy it is when it doesn't. This past week's presentation I'll be honest, the first hour I was like, eh. And the more I thought about it, and the more I thought about it, the more excited I got by the stuff they have. The drag is now I just want them to go ahead and get me my headset. And then next time you see me, you won't see me. You'll see weird looking eyes on a screen staring at you. Weirder than the ones you're seeing now.
I just got to say, I love your old school wired earpods.
Oh, well, that's because the lag kills me. The lag is almost imperceptible, but only almost imperceptible. And I could actually, yeah. So thanks. Also, I don't lose them because the only thing they do is this. So
I love it. I haven't seen a pair of those in a while, so I love seeing them out in the wild, and especially in professional use like this. That's great.
Professional, take it back.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I will attest and give an evangelism on that, your discussion on that, which I recommend everybody, if you have a chance, go listen to Mac OS Ken for September 19th. Yes, the same Tuesday as
9th, September 9th.
September 9th.
Yeah, because there was no way I was going to talk about what Apple might be announcing that day because it was all going to be either right or wrong.
Yeah.
Within about 3 minutes. But
and that discussion about the indications of the future from that was one of the most utterly brilliant things I have heard in months.
You got a face for that, Charles.
You're very kind. I will tell you. No, I'll tell you you're very kind. Thank you. It was
my thinking.
My favorite part about it, honestly, was being able to say, and this is going to sound like false humility, but my favorite part was realizing I was wrong, and then being able to come to people and say, guys, I've been wrong this whole time, and maybe I'm wrong now. I don't know, but it's fun to it's fun to keep kicking this stuff around and come across something that you thought you knew. Because go back to some show I did in 2021 or 2022, I think, with Tom Merritt. I've been bad-mouthing the idea of a foldable phone, not bad-mouthing it, because I've always said I'd like to be proven wrong. I would love it if I was incorrect about this, but I just don't see what it does for me. And so changing my thinking instead of like, well, they're not worried about you because you're not going to buy it. That's fine. The people who are going to buy it are going to get a great folding phone probably. But really, Apple's just going to learn a ton of stuff. Anyway, thank you, Charles. I appreciate your saying that. That was very kind.
Yeah.
I got a question.
Yes.
Does the AirPods I have the hearing correction programs and stuff like that? I have the ones I have now. And now, when we're moving ahead, and you're talking about the Pro 3s and all that kind of stuff,
Mhm.
that's what I have. Now, do they also still have the fact that the hearing aids are in the hearing aids?
Well, okay, so the AirPods Pro 3 will definitely still have the hearing stuff. So you have the AirPods Pro 2?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Do you know which ones you have, Barry?
I'm not exactly sure, but I thought it was 3.
No, that's
You might have the AirPods 3. You might have the third generation of the AirPods, which no, that does not have the hearing. I wish the naming conventions were a little bit better because right, there are AirPods with active noise cancellation, and then there are AirPods Pro. What you're looking for, I do not believe that the AirPod 4 with noise cancellation, but I'm not 100% certain. I don't believe that has that. I think you need the AirPods Pro. Well, if you can get the AirPods Pro 2, like from Amazon or Target or someplace like that, that's probably going to be cheaper because they're probably going to be selling through them and they're still going to be good for quite a while. But you would either need AirPods Pro 2 or AirPods Pro 3 to get that functionality.
Yeah,
Oh,
that particular feature does need to have the Pro version, which is the one with the little silicone nub that sticks into your ear.
Hmm.
The other ones that just hook onto your ear do not have that, cannot have that.
Bev.
Mine are the AirPods Pro number 3.
Did you just get them?
I've had them for about a month or two. When I heard the fact that they could they have the hearing aid corrections and all that kind of.
I think there was hearing aid stuff in the last 6 months or so, like or maybe even a year, and some of the models that came out before the newest ones.
Yeah, I think if you've got the hearing stuff in there, then it's got to be the AirPods Pro 2 because the AirPods Pro 3 don't actually come out until Friday.
Yeah, I remember I was chatting with somebody and I was like, "Oh, they can be like hearing aids. You should look into this." And that was a few months ago. Yeah.
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 Okay.
Oh,
So you're
So-
probably set, Barry.
okay.
Bev, I think you're muted. Are you? Bev has a
Okay.
question, I think.
Yeah. Actually, I guess I've had them for a month or so,
Okay.
and they got a number called Pro number 3 on them. And they run it through, they give you a little diagnostic program on your iPhone that actually tests your hearing,
Hmm.
and it corrects them into these. That's the reason I bought it.
Okay.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know.
you should be good then, Barry.
Yeah.
I think those do have the hearing aid functionality. Yes, indeed.
So if I move to the next one, it should also have that in it. But
Oh,
they don't
yeah.
make any mention of it.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Well, I mean, they're not in the habit of taking features away.
Yeah. Usually, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean,
Except for Firewire.
I want, well, okay. All right, that's fair.
No, usually they improve and they keep the functionality and
Yeah.
it gets better and better.
Like
99% of the time, of course.
I honestly don't remember whether they mentioned it or not. I know I didn't mention it today, but only because it didn't even concern me because it's already there. I mean, I'll put it this way, it would have been a big deal if they had removed that functionality. That would have been half the articles the day after the event.
Yeah.
So it's still there, but they're not. In fact, I know they mentioned it. I know they mentioned the fact that it's there because that was one of the things of here's what's been great about AirPods, and now we're adding this stuff too.
Yeah.
I think they also expanded that to other countries in the process.
I think so.
Okay.
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Okay.
How long do you typically, on average, do the AirPods last? I got a friend of mine that's always grousing about how he has to replace his AirPods because they don't last that long. I mean, I don't know. I don't experience that, but typically should it be like 3-4 years or
What's he
longer or
doing?
what? I mean, if he's
What's he
just, if
doing?
he's not upgrading, but he's just, he's got, let's say, I think he's got the pros. He usually gets the high ends.
Is he complaining because they're being updated and his are
No,
obsolete?
no, because they don't recharge or they
Well-
just don't function
Well,
properly.
batteries just age, and after 3 or 4 years, it's conceivable that the batteries are dying. That would not be surprising.
Yeah,
Okay, so
I'm on my.
3 years or so would be, average. I mean, that would be expected then.
Are the
How long did you say? 2 or 3 years?
Yeah,
I would imagine so. I had my first pair of AirPods did die on me, and then I got a pair of AirPods Pro. And then because I was curious about the hearing stuff, I went ahead and got a pair of AirPods Pro too. But my AirPods Pro did not die on me, so I gave them to another member of the family who's still using them now. So those have been going. It would probably have a lot to do though with how much you use them. Like I know that the oldest will probably have to replace theirs relatively soon because they're always walking around with their AirPods in.
yeah,
I mean, they're always noise canceling. They're always listening to music, and those are obviously gonna die more quickly than I think I probably use mine for maybe an hour or two a day. Like, if I go out for a walk or a run and then listening to podcasts at night when I don't want to annoy anybody else. So, I mean, your mileage would vary, I think, depending on how often you use
Sure.
them or how much.
right. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, with any battery, just even if you don't use it a lot, after 3, 4, 5 years, the batteries physically age and will start
Sure.
dying. Typically, if you're lucky, maybe they'll last longer, but after 3, 4, 5 years, yeah, they're gonna, need battery replacements or just replace the unit type of thing.
That's what I was going to ask. Are the batteries replaceable in those? Does anybody know? I don't.
I
No.
don't think so. Yeah.
No. All right. Okay.
Yeah. We should probably start thinking about wrapping things up here.
Yeah, it's 8:30.
Can you put in a good bit of mention concerning your lovely, nigh important daily news podcast
Yeah.
that some of us depend greatly on. You do other things as well. Where can we find you?
Well, macOS Ken is the big thing, so that's available any place you find podcasts, and macosken.com, MAC MACOSKEN, macosken.com. It was funny when they had macOS 10, but now they're on macOS 26, and I can't even think of how you would rhyme that with Ken. The other show that I do consistently is a show called The Checklist, which is sponsored by SecureMac or brought to you by SecureMac, produced by SecureMac. And it's sort of general cybersecurity stuff. We do lots of stuff about two-factor authentication, which I think I think August and I talked here like 5 years ago about that, maybe.
Yeah.
We do lots of stuff about two-factor authentication, password security. Lately, we've been doing a lot of stuff on ransomware attacks because the state of Nevada, or Nevada, depending on who you ask, their state has been under a ransomware attack for a couple of weeks now. City of St. Paul, Minnesota has been under a ransomware attack for about a month and a half. And it's been everything from, okay, it started off with, we don't know what this is. Oh, it turns out it's a ransomware attack, and then watching them slowly recover. Trying not to do that story every week, but it's hard not to, just because it's truly fascinating. But yeah, so, and if you go to macosken.com, well, let me back up. The checklist is available wherever you get podcasts. macOS Ken is available wherever you get podcasts, or if you go to macosken.com, they're both available there as well.
Okay. Yeah. Excellent. Excellent podcast.
Thanks. I'm looking forward to hearing them. I'm just learning about these now. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. There are lots of inside jokes because it's been going for 20 years, but you'll catch up.
Yeah.
So, okay. Well, we should, Ken, thank you. Thank you so much. We
Well,
appreciate
thank you very much for asking me.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it, and it was a true pleasure talking to everybody.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
All
you
right.
so much.
Good night.